right, so you see this guy here? This guy is Gregory B. Salder. And Gregory B. Salder, he is a sophist. And what a sophist is, the way I understand what a sophist is, because of Hamilton's The Farmer Refuted, a sophist is a person who puts forth an argument. First, they'll charge you a fee, right? They'll charge you money. And they'll put forth an argument, and they'll only say that their argument is right, not that they're not looking for objective truth. And what's the point of that? Two assholes could just be arguing all fucking day long, and if we're not trying to figure out the truth of things, then you're not even having a conversation. Ultimately, there is an objective truth, because JFK's head went back into the left. JFK's head went back into the left. So let's take a listen to some of what he's saying.
This is Dr. Gregory Salder. I'm a professor of philosophy and the president and founder of an educational consulting company called Reason.io.
Wow, the president and founder of the company, huh? So what's the difference? You founded it and made yourself president. So he's saying he charges money, right? He charges money for...
Where we put philosophy into practice.
And he says he puts philosophy into practice.
I've studied philosophy for over 20 years. And I find that many people run into difficulties reading classic philosophical texts.
Okay, so he doesn't understand. Let's go to here with this comments here. So I just asked him, he put out this video, Thomas Hobbes, The Other Laws of Nature. So he knows that there's 19 laws of nature of Hobbes. And I really like the 19 laws of nature of Hobbes because they're correct. Now, I said agree could mean a lot of different things. Do you agree with them? Do you believe them to be true and right? I mean, the first one would be the right to self-defense. Is that the problem? Does this fucking douchebag, this sophist douchebag, does he believe that we all have a right to self-defense? Then the second right that we have is the right to contract. So the right to contract and the right to self-defense is how Hobbes constructs the other 17 laws of nature. And then instead of actually reading this, because he's acting like, since he's a sophist, he's acting like he can understand philosophy and you can't, and his argument is right and your argument is wrong. So he'll charge you money and say, you know, you don't know what you're talking about. But I asked an easy question. I took all this time and effort out to, you know, write out the question. And I was saying that the parable of the sower of Matthew, he was saying when the soil is fertile, then you just soak it all in. When I read Hobbes, I soaked it all in. So the law of the jungle is a war of everybody versus everybody, whereas the law of nature, which is a law of rights, logically figured out, he was able to figure that. And he says, that's a word salad. And that's all I'm going to give to this conversation. And so I said, you don't have any idea what you're talking about. The 19 natural laws of Hobbes are intuitively correct. And then he's like, glad you outed yourself as a kook. Bye-bye. So he's just a fucking douchebag. Like he is if you don't believe me that he's a douchebag, let's take a look at him, okay? So look at this. Look at his tie. His tie goes all the way down to his ankles. If he don't even know how to tie his tie correctly. The tie is only a certain length, so all he needs to do is just retie his tie with the knot being a little bit farther down. So he clearly doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. And then look at all these things here. Do you think that you have a right to contract? He writes that down. I'm not sure if he writes the right to self-defense. There's the right to gratitude, accommodating, rational punishment. Is he against rational punishment? He's for irrational punishment. He's a sophist. Safe conduct for peacemakers. If you're a judge, make sure you're an impartial judge. Like, which one of these 19 laws does he disagree with? So we know that this Gregory Salder is not only a sophist, but he's, you know, a snake oil salesman. He's a traveling snake oil salesman. Let's just get a quick listen.
In chapter 15, and they are quite important. So the first bit is that he says that they oblige in what he calls in foro interno, right? So what does that mean? It means that they are obligatory on us. They bind to a desire that they should take place. And then he contrasts that to in foro external, that is to putting them in act. They don't always oblige us in that way. They're not effective in the sense of, oh, we realize them and we automatically start acting that way.
Not that we automatically, it's a contract. So let's say he actually understands philosophy and he's talking to, you know, another person who has a coherent and cohesive philosophy such as myself. And it's brilliant. It's brilliant. My God, Hobbes is brilliant. it's kind of sad that he's a freaking douchebag on top of him being a sophist. So I'm just going to read a little bit of Thomas Hobbes, and I'll just say another reason why he's brilliant. So Hobbes says that in the state of nature, everybody's fighting against everybody. So it's a war of all versus all. And the reason why I almost use the word state of jungle law. So jungle law is some people are prey, some people are predators, some people are exploited, some people are exploitators. It's kill or be killed. And because it's kill or be killed, then we have a short, brutish, nasty, terrible way. It's everybody versus everybody. And everybody versus everybody, it's a war. And so Hobbes doesn't want this war, and the way he's going to break out of this war, he's a royalist. But he still says that we have individual rights, individual freedoms. And he starts out with the first and the second ones. The first one is a right to self-defense. Does he disagree with that? What kind of piece of shit would say that you don't have a right to self-defense? And then a right to contracts. It's just don't engage in the conversation. So I don't know his perspective. I don't know if he has a perspective. He'll be a bullshitter, right? No, that's not what I said. And then you have to give him 20 minutes to eventually for him to say nothing. So let's start reading on Hobbes. The reason why it's genius. So let's say you have two people that actually want to try to find out the truth of things. So you can't have justice unless you have truth, right? If you don't know what happened, if you don't know person A hits person B, I think justice is eye for an eye. So therefore, person B gets to hit person A back. And then that solves it, right? Person A hits person B slugs him right back. If that's the end of that, entire series of events, that was justice. That was equal and exact justice. That's Thomas Jefferson. So we have a right to self-defense. And then the next one is a right to contract. And so just logically speaking, right, because we are rational man, so instead of just being jungle law, we're trying to figure out what are the rights of man. So there's no laws, no constitution, right? We just got out of the jungle, but there's two people that's talking and they're trying to figure out what is the rights of man. And so he says, first we got self-defense. I agree, Thomas Hobbes, we got the right to self-defense. And then he says, we have a right to contract. We have a right to enter into a contract and then to expect that contract to be enforced. I think that's right too. So if I'm, two people are talking about things, you have a right to self-defense, I got a right to self-defense. Any right that I have is a right that you would have. And then we both have a right to enter into a contract. I pay you $5, or I guess it's state of nature. I give you an orange for an apple. You got an apple, I got an orange. So we make a contract that I give you an orange, you give me an apple. We have a right to make that contract. We have a right to make that agreement. We have a right to, shake on it and say, okay, that's what we're doing. And then when I give them, the guy a bushel of oranges and he doesn't give me my apples, then Hobbes says, well, that's a state of war. And so we want civilization here. So we do need the contract to be enforced, and you'll have to enforce it yourself, and then it's just mano a mano, and then now you have to, fight the guy in order to, no, I gave you the fucking oranges, you didn't give me my fucking apples back. So give me my fucking apples, or give me my oranges back. Either give me the oranges back, or give me the fucking, you took the damn oranges? That Gregory Salder would be a guy that would take the damn oranges. So the laws of nature are immutable and eternal. The laws for injustice, ingratitude, arrogance, pride, iniquity, the laws of nature are eternal. So the laws of nature are immutable and eternal. For injustice, ingratitude, arrogance, pride, iniquity, exception of persons, and the rest can never be made lawful. You can never say that injustice is good. Ingratitude, arrogance, pride, iniquity, hatred, wickedness, exception of persons, and all the rest can be made good, because it will never be that war will preserve life and peace destroy it. We want peace. We want domestic tranquility. We want a utilitarian perspective of the general welfare. We want most people to be doing good. The same laws, because they oblige only to a desire and endeavor, I mean an unfeigned and constant endeavor, are easy to be observed. For in that they require nothing but endeavor, he that endeavoreth their performance fulfilleth them. And he that fulfilleth the law is just. And the science of them is the true and only moral philosophy, for moral philosophy is nothing else but the science of what is good and evil in the conversation and society of mankind. Good and evil are names that signify our appetites and aversions, which in different tempers, customs, and doctrines of men are different. And diverse men differ not only in their judgment on the senses of what is pleasant and unpleasant to the taste, smell, hearing, touch, and sight, but also of what is conformable or disagreeable to reason in the actions of common life. Nay, the same man in diverse times differs from himself And the one time praiseth, that is called good, what another time he dispraiseth and called evil. From whence arise disputes, controversies, and at last war. And therefore, so long a man is in the condition of mere nature, which is a condition of war, as private appetite is the measure of good and evil, and consequently all men agree on this, that peace is good, and therefore also the way or means of peace, which, as I have showed before, are justice, gratitude, modesty, equity, mercy, and the rest of the laws of nature are good. That is to say, moral virtues. So we're talking about right versus wrong. We're talking about the laws of nature being eternal, laws of nature properly defined, which isn't the jungle law. The laws of nature is rational man in the jungle. So you put rational man in a jungle, what does rational man figure out for himself? And if you add one other person, you can contract. That's how you start contracts, right? You're going to make a contract with, even I bet you the squirrels would understand some sort of contract, right? They want to just take all the nuts or whatever, but if you have a thing of nuts and then, I don't know, a reciprocity. I'm trying to say that even in nature itself, you might have a sense of reciprocity. The rest of the laws of nature are good. That is to say, moral virtues and their contrary vices, evil. He's right. When will justice ever be bad? When will justice, gratitude, modesty, and equity and mercy be evil and wicked? It never will be. Justice, gratitude, modesty, equity, mercy, these things will always be good. They'll always be good. And so he's saying that's moral philosophy. This motherfucking Gregory Salder doesn't know moral philosophy, the science of virtue and vice. Now, maybe this has to do with the knowledge of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, because people have different ideas of what is good and evil. So just listen to me, the Sophist. I know what's right and you are wrong. And therefore, the true doctrine of the laws of nature is the true moral philosophy. But the writers of moral philosophy, though they acknowledge the same virtues and vices, yet not seeing wherein consisted their goodness, nor that they come to be praised as the means of peaceable, sociable, and comfortable living, place them in the mediocrity of passions, as if not the cause, but the degree of daring made fortitude, or not the cause, but the quantity of a gift made liberality. These dictates of reason men used to call by the name of laws, but improperly, for they are but conclusions or theorems concerning what conduceth to the conservation and defense of themselves. Whereas law properly is the word of him that by right hath command over others. And yet if we consider the same theorems as delivered in the word of God, that by right commandeth all things, then they are properly called laws. So, did you understand all that? What he's saying there is, okay, so we just sat there, two rational men just discussed, and they both agree. Just, we'll say the first two laws. And then judge should be, a fair judge. Does he disagree with that? Which one of these 19 laws of Hobbes does he disagree with? I would love to know if he's an honest person. I don't think he's an honest person. So he's not looking for the truth. So he's a sophist. He just wants his argument to prevail, and he gets all the authority, and he knows everything that's going on. And instead of just having a conversation, if you have two people who agree, one, that we have a right to self-defense, and two, we have a right to engage in a contract and for that contract to be enforced, then those are not exactly laws, because we deduced them by logic. We figured out what the logical way is, and we don't want war, we want civilization. And so the reason why we both agree to that is because we are in favor of civilization. And that's also a social contract, right? But he's saying because it came from reason alone, and because it's intuitively and obviously correct, of course you have a right to self-defense, and of course you got a right to engage in contracts, and you have a right to expect that contract to be fulfilled. You have a right to expect that contract to be fulfilled. I gave you a bushel of oranges. You didn't give me a bushel of apples back. You need to give me my fucking oranges back, or there's going to be fucking trouble. And that's exactly what Hobbes is saying. We're trying to get out of the law of jungle. We're trying to get out of this idea that there's going to be trouble because you reneged on your contract. You negated. And since we came up with it through logic alone, therefore, that's like the word of God. And so they are laws, but they're not positive laws. Positivist laws, they call them. So it's not laws of man and you better obey my laws and who gives a shit about your laws. They're the laws of God. And the laws of God is the great spirit of ultimate goodness. And so the great spirit of ultimate goodness says that, yes, everybody has a right to self-defense and everybody has a right to contract. of persons, authors, and things personated. Do we want to keep on going for chapter 16? No, that's it. That's it. So do we want to listen to some more of this guy? No, I mean, he keeps going on and on about these Latin phrases. And you heard what he said, that a lot of times the concepts are actually easy to understand, but not if you got a sophist explaining it to you. If you have a sophist explaining it to you, well, he's just going to say his way is right and everybody else is wrong. Which ones he disagree with? Not displaying hatred or contempt. So he's going to love this, right? This stupid ass piece of shit. This dumb ass piece of shit. How's he like that? I mean, he can't agree that we have a right to self-defense and we have a right to contract, and he doesn't think that judges should be impartial. So judges should be biased. He doesn't think peacemakers should have self-conduct. He thinks wickedness can be good and good can be wicked. He thinks war can bring about safety and life, and peace doesn't do shit for people. So let's see what he says in the next minute. Go ahead, Greg Salder. Go ahead.
He actually frames it like this. In revenges, that is retribution of evil for evil, men look not at the greatness of the evil past, but the greatness of the good to follow.
Okay, so do you agree with that? That sounds intuitively right to me. You know, revenges is just punishment, so that's justice. He has, he says injustice is breaking the contract. But if somebody, person A, punches person B has a right to punch person A back equally and exactly, and then that's justice, and then the situation is over. You don't need to call the third person or the fourth person, and then we don't need to have a big old fucking parade or whatever and try to figure out who was right and who was wrong. Now, he hit me, so I hit him back. There, the whole thing is fucking over. The whole thing is fucking over. Let's see.
What he's actually proposing here is that not that people don't get punished, but that they're punished in order to deter others from engaging in that action.
That's not exactly what he said. He said for the future good. So he says when it comes to punishment, you want the future good. So I just said that punching person A back, person A punches you, and therefore person B has a right to punch the guy back equally and exactly the same way you punched me in the shoulder, let's say. Person A punches me in the shoulder, I get to punch person A back in the shoulder. Now, why would that be good for the future? That's good for the future because person A, you can't go around just punching people for no fucking reason. And because he punched me in the shoulder, I punched him back, so now he feels pain and he's like, well, shit, I don't want to get punched in the shoulder no more. Then we quit. Now we're not at war anymore. You going around punching people is you being at war with people. Those are crimes. And intuitively, logically, don't rape, don't murder, don't assault, don't steal, don't maim, don't torture, don't enslave. These are obviously correct if you're a logical person.
And to keep them from engaging in it as well. He says, we are forbidden to inflict punishment with any other design than for correction of the offender or direction of others. So he's saying, don't just try to, attain justice for the victims or something like that. The victims are gone or dead or something like that.
No, come on. You just heard what he just said. He said that for the future, and he said to correct the punisher. So that is what he's saying. That's exactly what he's saying. This guy doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about at all. He is such a dumbass sophist. Oh my God. Listen to his argument, even if he's totally wrong. He doesn't know what the hell he's talking about, but because he's getting paid, right, he's a capitalist. So he needs to say that he knows everything, and therefore you need to pay him money in order to hear him, and then he also thinks that you're wrong. So that's his philosophy? That's a stupid philosophy. What a dumb fucking philosophy to have. To say only I know what's right and true and you don't.
Or perhaps, if they're living, you could redress them in that way. But
he's sitting there trying to make sense of all these ancient fucking philosophers and these ancient texts, and a lot of it's good, but I would say most of Hobbes is kind of bullshit, but these laws of nature is fucking brilliant. A lot of Hobbes is bullshit, but these laws of nature are just brilliant, just incredibly brilliant. It should be Philosophy 101 or Natural Law 101 should be Hobbes's 19 laws of nature. And actually, I've heard him say a couple other laws of nature elsewhere in different books. So there's probably like 24 laws of nature by Hobbes.
What we're really looking at is a much more utilitarian approach where we say, well, how are we going to keep this person from doing this in the future? How are we going to keep others from doing this sort of thing?
Well, you punch him back. If that's the law of the land, is if you get punched, then you get to punch the other person back. Well, that's the law of the land. That's how you thought of the future good. So not only did you dissuade others from doing it, because nobody's allowed to go around punching anybody. Person A punched you in the shoulder. He got punched back. He don't like that. He don't want that to happen again. And so therefore, it's not going to happen. So therefore, you thought of the future good. You went ahead and stopped it from happening for others because you stopped it right. You nipped it right in the bud. Right there in the bud. The motherfucker punched you. You punched him back there. The shit is over. Now, maybe the other person gets pissed off and then they want to keep on fighting. And then tit for tat, Gandhi says eye for an eye eventually makes the whole world blind. So there's something to that. But I think that's the beginning. If not eye for an eye, then eye for something equivalent of an eye. How much jail time is an eye worth? How much of a fine is an eye worth? So eye for an eye is right. Tooth for a tooth, hand for a hand, limb for limb. That's correct. It's logical and it's right. Do we want to hear any more of this? Yeah, let's. I'm kind of having fun. This guy doesn't know Hobbes. He doesn't know philosophy. He's a sophist.
Interesting one. He says that because all signs of hatred or contempt provoke to fight, we have this law of nature that no person by deed, word, countenance, or gesture declare hatred or contempt of another, the breach of which law is commonly called contumely. Now, we don't use that.
Contumely. No, that's great, because this isn't really a concept in today's English parlance. So let's be against contumely. So what he is saying, Hobbes is saying, is Chaplinsky. The Chaplinsky decision is fighting words. We have freedom of speech, but there's a couple of exceptions. And the Supreme Court says in the Chaplinsky decision that if a fascist tries to arrest you, you're not allowed to call that fascist a fascist. Which, that is a ridiculous fucking notion. But let's say you're peacefully reading a book underneath a tree and I come up to you and I say, you dumbass bitch, you piece of shit bitch, you ain't shit bitch. Now, is that right? Is that okay? I don't know. Technically, under freedom of speech, if you're an absolutist, you would say that's okay. I'm just peacefully reading a fucking book under a tree and you just came up here fucking cussing me out. Some people would say that it's right to stand up and smack that guy in his mouth. Now, when I think about it specifically, like the N-word, when I think of it isn't just, just two equals, but if you spit out the N-word and then the other person wants to, stand up for himself and possibly use a little bit of force, he is right in using force because you went there to insult him. You went there, you showed hatred, you showed contempt for the other person, and Hobbes' explanation of this is brilliant too. Hobbes' explanation of this is there's two types of injustice. There's two types of wrongs. If you wronged a person by speaking ill of them, well, you didn't really injure them. There's no physical injury. There's no actual injury to show, the judge of what had happened. But because you have hatred and contempt, it shows, therefore, i.e., that you're capable of hurting the other, that you want to hurt the other, that you want to injure the other person. So let's take a listen to this. When he was contemptuous with me, right, when he just says that's a word salad there and I will not engage in this word salad, he had that big freaking religious shit all over the place. He doesn't know the parable of the sower. If you throw seeds on the stones, it doesn't grow. If you throw seeds in the thorns, it doesn't grow. If you throw seeds in the rocks, it doesn't grow. But if you throw seeds in fertile ground, it grows. And so Jesus says that's the same way with him in the word. When he gives the word, if you are fertile ground, you'll listen to it. And so I was just saying, when I read Hobbes, I was fertile ground for Hobbes, and I ate every bit of it up. What is wrong about Hobbes? Instead of just being like, I know and you don't. What is wrong about the 19 laws of nature that Hobbes comes up with?
Word contumely, right? Are you a contumelious person? No. We call somebody a jerk or an a-hole or something like that, right?
Right. And he's a jerk. He's an asshole.
Which is a more active thing. And don't display contempt, where you don't care about the person at all. Don't display this in words. Don't display it in gestures. Don't display it in actions. Don't display it in countenance, which is your facial expression, all right? So that's an important one. Closely related to this.
He doesn't really say if he agrees with it or disagrees with it. He just says it's an important one. So if you're going to learn Hobbes, I guess it is an important one. But, yeah, what the fuck?